we released as at the end of the year, which is the AI revolution, a paper that was signed by the CEO of bank in the UK, alongside with the platform, and the 2022 rollout of the banking and financial markets, which we released at the beginning of this year, is our flagship for banking, digital banking in EMEA. If you don't know what the IBM is, the Institute of Business Value is our research center that discusses how technology can sometimes inspire, but definitely facilitates the transformation of operations and business models. So we start with a macroeconomic perspective, the question, can AI make your country more productive? And then we go into a micro perspective, which is, can AI make your bank more productive? And we try to connect the dots. So without much ado, we start with the macro perspective. Now, if you look at this graph, this represents the productivity growth rate of the world economy. So how much the GDP, in essence, is changing over time. And if you look at the far right of this chart, you see that starting from 2000, the productivity growth rate has been going down. Now, before we get there, which is the problem that we want to address, let's understand how technology intersected productivity to power it exponentially. Now, if you go back to the 1760, the creation of the steam engine did not have an immediate impact on the productivity growth rate. It took almost 100 years before the steam engine was available in the major production centers of the countries that at the time made for the bulk of the world economy. In 1879, the light bulb was invented, but it took almost 50 years before every office, every industry, every house had a light bulb and connected with the electricity, so that we could see a strong impact on the productivity growth rate. And if you go to more recent times, the personal computer was invented in 1971. You might remember the IBM PC. But it took almost 30 years before in the 1990s, we could see basically a growth in the productivity growth rate. But since the year 2000, the productivity growth rate has been going down, which is puzzling the economists. Of course, we had some issues like the global financial crisis, for example, or the euro sovereign debt crisis. But this is also the time where the smartphone was invented. So everyone is connected. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone is on a Wi-Fi. Cloud computing is becoming a dominant technology. So the question is why we didn't see the growth rate going up again for the productivity of the world economy? And can maybe AI address this issue in terms of course correcting this trend? Now, before I proceed, I want to tell you, there is also a little issue about the way productivity is measured by the economists. Remember, economists, also those of Colombia, sorry for them, are not perfect. So don't know what you did for the New Year's Eve in 2023. I was in Paris, and these are thousands of people at the Champs-Élysées making videos and pictures of the Arc de Triomphe waiting for the year end and the new year to come. Now, I'm not sure if the smartphones made us smarter. I hope that AI does. But in essence, what I want to tell you here is the following. We are also moving in the platform economy, and all of these people are working for free, and a lot of people are downloading and consuming for free on these social media platforms, where every time there's not a price, it's difficult for economists to measure productivity. So it can also be that there is a gap in the capability we have now to understand how the economy works. But putting this on the side and being aware of that, the question is, for AI to add value in terms of reigniting the productivity growth rate, it needs to resolve the most daunting questions, the most challenging questions of the world economy. And how do we represent them? I have them in this graph. It's a busy graph, but in essence, it's simple. Because on the horizontal axis, you have the percentage of the working age population in different countries. So is your population aging? So people are retiring, or is your population growing? There are more young people getting into the productive workforce. And on the vertical axis, you have the gross domestic product, the GDP per hour worked. Now, I'm plotting countries, dividing them into three macro areas. First of all, the major advanced economies could be the G7 plus, so Europeans, the US. You see that they tend to have a high GDP per hour worked, but also shrinking workforce. If you have a shrinking workforce, you reduce your capability to contribute to the GDP of the country, so to reward GDP. The problem of the BRICS instead, could be India, China in particular, is that some of them are actually now seeing a reduction of the workforce, which is due to the working age population. But in particular, they're facing premature deindustrialization. So China took 10 years to consume the same economic cycle of the US. That was sort of 30, 40 years. And now, as they are automating more the economy, they are basically reducing the capability to leverage the workforce in order to produce and become more productive. And the third is a lot of emerging markets where typically, there is a low cost for the creation of GDP, but at the same time, they're exposed to the fact that automation can basically eat their lunch, so they may not be positioned to grab the benefit of the deindustrialization of China and India, which are also growing in their prices for the production contribution as much as we were supposed to see in the past. So now let me summarize this in this simpler chart. So we have countries with a productivity disadvantage, the G7 plus and the BRICS economies, and country with a productivity advantage, more or less the rest of the world. So if AI will add to the productivity growth rate, it needs to address these core problems of these countries. Now, in terms of aging, if AI will be capable to augment the workforce pool, allowing fewer people to do more as they are working and to also differently. Therefore, these countries will basically be capable of regulating their capability to grow and to increase the productivity growth rate irrespective of the number of people participating into the economy. What about the BRICS? Well, if these countries will be capable of shifting in terms of the servicization model to AI-added services, they will be able to contribute to the productivity growth rate in positive terms. So now these countries are largely manufacturing countries or service-oriented countries like India for the world economy. As economies are becoming more AI-oriented, they will need services that these countries can basically provide and facilitate. What we are actually saying in this paper that the picture is not so clear-cut in terms of the preconditions for the rest of the world, because AI is now more and more capable of automating also the simpler jobs. So there may not be a need for the larger countries to outsource production into these countries, which used to have a competitive advantage in terms of the lower cost of the labor force, as automation now might basically disintermediate this cost advantage. So that spells for the understanding at the regulatory level, industry level, government level of all these forces, because every country will have a different positioning in terms of how to grab the advantages of the AI transformation of the world economy. So now, to summarize what we're saying here, the question is, can AI basically now reignite the growth rate of the world economy? First of all, for that to happen, it should not be a new innovation, because it takes time between innovation is created and the time it takes to have an impact. Now, AI is not new innovation. IBM started investing in the AI production in the 1950s. What you see today with AI and generative AI is a maturing innovation. So that means that most of the time is at our back. However, we know that to make good usage of that, we need a consistent and proper regulation. So the picture is not yet so clear-cut. So the more regulation will be clear, the better it will be for companies to adapt this new technology in order to transform and add the productivity capabilities. What about the broad rollout? Now, it has been evident in the last 2-3 years that AI is becoming more accessible and more versatile. Just think about what is happening with OpenAI and the large language models. So definitely AI now is broadly available and accessible by many. However, being accessible doesn't mean you can just use it. First, the core of AI is in the hands of a handful of companies, which are now all big tech, more than the fintech ecosystem. Second, if you don't have an architecture that allows you to connect to AI and generative AI in a way that you can control the framework, the bias, the risk implied with the technology, will not be able to leverage it. So it's important that your bank makes the right investment into the platform and architecture that drives the governance for you to access AI on-prem and off-prem. And what about the impact on the workforce? Well, basically, we said that automation is okay, but if you do not find a way to leverage AI and Gen AI for augmentation of the workforce, you may not reap the benefit, which is actually the problem for a lot of countries where there is more like an automation perspective than an augmentation capability, given the type of job that people are making. So this is my comment and my framework that discusses what happens at the level of your country, the world economy. So now, the point is that even though we said that there are countries which are more exposed to automation and others with augmentation, don't forget that automation is blind to the color of your color, and all of you have a white collar. So now the question is, how can AI augment your capability to work and to better contribute to the bottom line of Bancolombia or whatever institution you're in? So we now dive into a macro perspective, the one of your bank, and we reconnect the dots with the macro perspective, the one of your country. So let me start with this. I have a question with you. I don't know if the presenter will be able to tell me more or less what you say in the audience. You can say it loud or you can write it in the chat. So we released this research early this year, the 2024 Global Outlook for Banking and Financial Markets, Regenerate Banking with AI, asking 600 plus executives of all the banks that have more than 10 billions of total assets in the world if they are working with generative AI today. In particular, we wanted to know if they are the way they are working with that and if they're live or intend to go live anytime soon. Now, do you know how many banks in the world said that they do not intend to work with generative AI currently, or they are not working with that now? Is that 1%, 5%, 10%, 20%, 50%, 80%? So what is your number? The percentage of banks worldwide that do not intend currently to work with generative AI. You can basically make up your mind, tell me the percentage. If you downloaded the report already from our web pages, you will know the answer. So I don't know what you're saying because I cannot see the chat, I cannot hear you, but let me tell you what the number is. That's 14%. So 14% of the banks worldwide do not intend currently to work with generative AI, not AI, generative AI. But 8% of banks worldwide have a systematic approach to use generative AI. That means that they are currently working around all business units in the core domains in terms of developing solutions or live already with some solutions of generative AI, which also means that 78% of all the banks have a tactical approach to use generative AI. When you looked inside this data, we saw that it is tactical because they never start from the same starting point. It's like in some banks, this business unit has more money or more capability to onboard innovation compared to the business unit. So it becomes very tactical. It's not strategic. It's where the money is. Now, if you think about what we said before, you need an architecture that allows you to access AI and generative AI to bring the development enterprise-wide. Those investments are significant. Only if you have a strategic perspective, will be able to manage those in a way that you build your competitive advantage, in a way that you have an infrastructure that allows you to hit the bottom line positively or the productivity of your bank. Otherwise, you may have some benefits, but those will not basically be revealed enterprise-wide, so will not sense it in the end when you look at your operations and business model of your institution. Which leads into this analysis now. The productivity, before AI was becoming relevant and before Gen AI became mainstream, banks have been investing in technology to become more productive. Now, I want to show you this chart where I divide again the major advanced and EU economies, given the IMF definition, the other advanced and emerging economies, where you also have Colombia. And now I'll show you the cost-income ratio. The cost-income ratio tells you basically the efficiency of your institution. I will show you the median of the cost-income ratio, starting from the year 2006, just before the global financial crisis, and bars which contain 50% of the banks. So basically, the higher you go, the worse the bank is in terms of performance. The lower you go, the better the bank is. Now, whether you are in the major advanced economies or in the emerging markets, you see that notwithstanding the main investments in technology, the cost-income ratio remained pretty flat over time. It improved a little bit, in particular in the major advanced economies in the last years, but that's primarily due to the fact that there were some positive opportunities for banks to make more money given the level of interest rates, but overall that remained flat. So that means that there's something that dragged the bank's capability to basically leverage technology to augment their efficiency and productivity. Now, what that can be? Well, I made this analysis where I looked at the total operating expenses of all these banks worldwide. So this is the worldwide, the median and average. So what you can see is basically the percentage that the workforce contributes to the total operating expenses compared to other elements like pure technology. Now, this is the evolution. You see that in 2007, technology expenditures were 6% of everything that the bank spends over the year. It went down through the crisis and up again now to 6.6%. But the contribution of the workforce to the total operating expenses of institutions on average went from 50% to 54.6%, so 4.6%. Now, that is not that per se. I mean, I believe that people are a resource, but that tells you that it is not enough for you as an institution to think in terms of automation if you don't know how to augment the people that were part of an automation process to better contribute to the bottom line, because they will always be part of your institution and likely they want to be part of your workforce pool. So it's very important that every time you think about AI and generative AI, not only you think about automation, but you think contemporaneously on how to augment people, how augment yourself in your capability to contribute to the bottom line, because that is where you will see the biggest benefit in terms of boosting the productivity of Bancolombia. And now, having said that, we are also researching continuously on which are the most important skills that the workforce is supposed to have going forward. And I want to show you this data point that's very interesting. The first time I showed that was last year in September, I think. I had 500 engineers of ING Bank in the Netherlands, so the bulk of their engineering team, they all met for one day to discuss talent and transformation. So they were talking about things like, should we use Python instead of C++ or use this type of APIs framework or one. And I was invited to open that day for talent transformation. And I showed that this at the point. We asked in 2016, 3,000 executives worldwide, which are the most important skills required in the workforce going forward. And we asked the same question every year until 2023. So we're doing the same this year. And basically in 2016, this pool of execs said that proficiency in STEM is number one with basic IT skills. Now, I don't know if you're engineers, I'm economists, we are on the same side of the equation. Economists and engineers are not very creative, so typically we see a gap between creativity and STEM, and I don't think this is the case. I believe you are creative as much as I am. And then in the middle, we had other elements like teamwork ability, time management, prioritization. Now, I have a question for you. Where do you believe in 2023, these 3,000 executives said is the relevance of proficiency in STEM? Is it number 1, number 2, number 5, number 10, or number 12? So going forward, what do you believe is the importance of proficiency in STEM? You can think about it a bit. And the next question will be, of course, what about creativity? Is now creativity number 1, in the middle, or at the bottom? So now, let me show you what these 3,000 executives interviewed worldwide told us. Well, basically, proficiency in STEM and basic IT skills go down. Is this a trade-off with creativity? Not so much. So what goes to the top is prioritization, time management, teamwork ability. Now, I cannot hear you, but I tell you, I had the brouhaha in the audience in Amsterdam, and I think people wanted to throw tomatoes at me because they were all engineers. And the CIO of the bank that came on stage after my speech said, Paolo, maybe you've been too much provocative today. Anyway, we spent the whole day together, the whole day discussing this and that for talent transformation. And at the end of the day, the CIO made the summary and said, I learned something important today. What I learned is that our industry is too complex. Our bank is too complex. We don't know how to prioritize. We don't know how to manage time. There's always something we have to do. And now even technology is galloping, is going very fast. We didn't have Gen AI 2 years ago to think about. Now we have it. And we don't know how to basically connect all the dots in terms of our agility, because maybe we want to be agile, but we don't have necessarily a platform that enables us to share those units of value team with team in order to move forward. So therefore, he said, if we do not reduce the complexity, we can add as much as talent and new technology we want, we will not move the needle. So this picture is not a static picture. It's like a dynamic picture. It basically tells you that the industry is realizing that in order to add value from the talent you basically hire and the new technology on board, you need to reconsider the operating model and the business model in a way that every dollar invested in talent and technology will effectively resonate, which is one of the things that I'm happy to discuss with clients. And we don't have much time to go into details today, but hopefully there will be an opportunity with you and your colleagues going forward at Bancolombia. And then last but not least, as we're talking about this, we asked the CEOs beginning of this year, what do they think in terms of generative AI and AI today, as everything is accelerated, right? And it's very complex to decide what to do. So do you know the percentage of CEOs that said that they will take significant risks to gain automation advantages or to become more competitive? Is that 5% of the CEOs, 10%, 20%, 50%, 100%? Bankers are risk averse in essence. So do you know that percentage? Think about Bancolombia. Well, let me tell you what we learned from this panel of banking CEOs. 66% of banking CEOs and 67% of banking CEOs, basically the same number, said that they will want to take more significant risks because they feel like they really need to press ahead. Now, that is my last message to you in my presentation. In the 1990s, where I was head of quantitative risk management in investment banking, we used to say that every banker is a risk manager because risk management is the core business of a bank. Now, I'm telling you now, every banker must be an AI risk manager. So if there is a skill that you need to develop across the workforce to make sure that you can leverage AI and generative AI with the right solutions, with the right approach, that skill is the risk management skill, because this is more and more a probabilistic technology. So those banks that will be able to build their risk management knowledge of AI in a way that is distributed along the workforce are those which will be more positioned to leverage that technology for the good, being able to master it and add to the productivity of the institution. I thank you for the time you dedicated. There might be space for a Q&A. All of our material is free for you to use and download. You can go to the ibm.com/IBV, forgot to put a QR code. But if you do that, then you go to the banking and financial market pages. You can download all of this report. There's way more that I can tell in these 20 minutes. Hope you will indulge and come back with questions. Thank you. And if someone is speaking, I cannot hear.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if we have any questions from the audience here, but we do not have much time. So thank you very much for joining us on FinTech 2024. It was a pleasure to have you with us.
Absolutely. Arrivederci.
Thank you.